So we're carrying on from the video last week with Falsetto Word, and before we go ahead I'm going to do something I don't often do, and that's install a few extensions into Visual Studio. I don't like adding third-party things to Visual Studio because it slows it down, you become reliant on them, things like that, so I rarely use any kind of add-ins to Visual Studio. But they've recently released some new productivity power tools that are basically a group of really popular commands, and the ones I've highlighted in red here I'm going to use. So copy as HTML, if you just open it up, basically whenever you copy code and if you pasting it into something that only accepts HTML like a web page, it will actually paste as all the colours so it looks just like the code. So that's going to be helpful for just general copy and paste, and the amount of times you copy, that's not going to slow anything down. So I'm going to put that one on. I've already installed that. This one's going to be really useful for these videos, I'm hoping. I haven't tried it yet, but double click to maximize a window. So we should be able to just double click a code window and have it completely full screen, and then just double click or escape or whatever it is to get out of it again. So we'll try this in a moment. So all you do is click download, and I'll install the last one so you can see. Fix mixed tabs. Again, I work with multiple developers. Some of them have their Visual Studio set up for tabs, others have it for spaces. Some people are just bad at maintaining the accurate distance between indentations. So this little add-on, made by Microsoft, so it's going to be nice and efficient. Every time you've got a file open, if there's any inconsistency in the tabs or the spaces, you'll get a little bar at the top that gives you the option to fix those. So again, pretty lightweight, so I'm going to install that one. And the last one is this power commands for Visual Studio. So I'm going to head and install this one this time to show you. And the reason I wanted this one was because of this remove and sort usings on save. I'm potentially thinking at using. I'm not 100% convinced yet because I don't really like things messing with my files when I click save. I expect them to be what they are. But there's quite a lot of commands in here that are useful, like edit project file now is like a shortcut for non.NET commands, and unload all projects, and there's just quite a lot of useful little commands, and they don't do anything unless you run them. So again, they're like, you can see here, power commands, and then if you just want to filter all of your unused namespaces and things like that, or copy the path to the file. There's just a few things in there I think will be useful. So to install these add-ins, you just click the download button, and you can do this inside of Visual Studio, but I've just done it on the marketplace.visualstudio.com and search for Power Tools 2017 was the original page, and then it takes you to these specific ones. It'll pop up with this open dialog. Just open it, that's fine, and then what it'll do is try and install into Visual Studio. Make sure Visual Studio is closed, otherwise it'll just ask you to close it, and then click install, and then it'll just add this extension, and you can always remove them if you don't like them. So that's the extension done. We'll show you those in a second. The next thing, I've changed my keyboard in case people ask. Yeah, I know a lot of you like the keyboard, so this is the one I've just changed to. It's MX Brown keys now, so it's mechanical. You can hear the slight difference in the keys, I'm guessing. So it's a little bit quieter, which I thought was the other keyboard seemed a little bit too loud. So let's go ahead and open Visual Studio now, and let's get started. So the first time you open it after installing new extensions, you get this writing component cache. That's basically setting up the new extensions. And then here we are. Let's open up Falsetto Word. And those extensions, now if you go to Tools, Extensions and Updates at the top, you'll see now they're in this installed, or they should be. There's the copy as HTML, so you could just uninstall if you liked. Double click maximize, fix tabs, and power tools, power commands there. So they're in there if you want to remove them or disable them. So let's first make this back to 170. Minimize this and this. And now I should be able to just, double click here. Oh yeah, oh that kind of didn't work. Let's try that again. Just double click again. Yeah, so that doesn't work very well. That opens and closes. Let's try this one. Okay, so code files work. I've got to submit a bug for them then in that case. How do we get out of minimized? you just drag, I guess. So it'll work for files like this, and then it looks like you just click and drag, double click the bar, it's maximized, and click and drag this and it instantly redocks. The thing it doesn't look like it works for is the XAML files, which typical is the one we use a lot of. So you double click a XAML CS file. Oh, now it's working. Okay, that must have been just a little bit glitchy. Oh no, sorry, it's the XAML itself, isn't it? So this XAML file, which is, wonder if it was to do with the split screen. Swap them over, minimize that, and double click. Yeah, so that it works now. So it's a little bit finicky. You have to make sure you haven't got both open, I guess, and then it doesn't redock quite right. So it is a little bit buggy there. So we'll maybe avoid using that for the XAML files, and I'll submit an initial bug. Anyway, the other thing you'll have noticed, I've changed all my windows to complete darkness. So all the files and everything are now dark. Interestingly, that's caused us to notice an issue in pages. Let's say the login page, which we are on. Split, swap over, and where are we? And then look what's happened. So because now my window, and the same thing with like Notepad, as you noticed, the background of everything is now dark grey and the text is light. Because we've explicitly set like the placeholder colour as black, we've never explicitly set the background colour or foreground colour of the text box. So if we run this, I think we'll have to actually change that to run. Yeah, let's just change it to the page. Control T brings up this new little search dialog. Let's type in window view model and press enter. And then public properties, change the startup page to login. And then F5, and let's take a look at that again. And you'll have seen that the scroll bar that we haven't styled yet has gone to dark as well. And then these you can see are dark, and when you type, they're basically following my Windows machine's colour, which is okay, but not when we've customized, you know, our UI to be what we want it to look like. So I think one thing in light of this is we should make a theme for our own application that's also dark. So you've got a light and a dark version. But for now we need to at least fix this issue. So let's start with that. That's a nice easy one. Yeah, this is now... I think I might uninstall that double click thing. As much as it looked useful, I don't think that's really working that well. Let me just disable it for now. What a shame, that looked like it was going to be useful. This is why I don't tend to do extensions and add-ins. They just rarely work, you know, as clean as the entire Visual Studio. Right then, so let's open styles for the text box, or texts in this case. Here's the text box style, we're already right by it. Add a property for, we need the background to be foreground light brush, which is the white, and the foreground wants to be the foreground dark brush, which is our text color. Same for the password box, so just find the password box, paste that in as well, and then press F5. I think that should fix the text boxes. There we go. So oh, kind of, we want that to be darker. Thought that's what the dark was. Oh no, very dark is what we wanted. Text box, very dark. Try that once more. There we go. So that's back to working. We'll style this scroll bar another time. So we were going to do, well, I was going to do the chat bubbles for the chat page. I've had a lot of people wanting to progress their own applications, and now they're at the point where you've got a sign-in page. Well, how do I now load a register page, or how do I load another page when I click buttons? And that's, or how do I change the side menu? So a lot of these questions now are starting to go a little bit forward of the video, which is fine, but that also means we need to step back and we really need to split this project now into its master and a core project because it's starting to grow large. We also don't want these view models to be in, you know, the actual WPF application. It's time to really clean up this project, and we're also at the stage now. Let's basically play through this scenario and you'll see where we get to and why. So we want to add a register page. So let's start with that. Let's copy the login page, copy and paste. Rename this to register page. Clean up the names. Split. Hide that. So title, we'll call it register. You don't see the title in this one, but we'll call it that. Register page. F7 to get to the code behind. This is also register page. We don't care right now about the login view model. We're not going to use this as, you know, we're not finishing this page in this tutorial, so we just want to get the page up and running. So there's a new class that we'll have to change the view model afterwards, but it's perfectly valid register class now. Let's change this text a little bit to sign up. I know we'd want a password verification as well, but again, just for quickness, we'll ignore that for the moment. Change this to register. Change this comment to or I already have an account, and then they can click that to go to the login page. We open up the login page and you've got sign in, blah blah blah, log in, and then this message is wrong. This wants to be or create a free account. And there's the new message. So in order to get to the next page, this would be the link that would take you to the register page. So let's start with putting those onto fresh lines. Now, as you've seen with the login button, all you do to perform an action, you know, do something when the user clicks that, on a button in this case, we just bind to the command. So there's your command, you want to bind, and we'll call this register command. Remember, this is bound to the login view model. So Control T, login view model, enter. We want to go to the commands, copy and paste this, and let's add a register command. Rename this. And again, commands are just basically functions, if you will, methods, things to run, but in view model terms. And then in the constructor, create the commands. We need to create the register command. This time it's just a normal relay command. We don't need to pass any parameter in like we did with the login. And that will now just become, well, stay async, it'll await. That'll be a function called register that we'll make. And then just make a new function. Copy and paste this again. Been a little bit lazy today, a lot of copy and pasting. Attempts to register the user now. Takes the user to the register page. There is no parameter, it's called register. Get rid of the parameter. Run a command. We don't really need a command here. Well, yeah. We could actually lock the login as running. No, let's just, well. See, this is not going to be instant in terms of changeover when we animate, but I think we don't need any sort of state. We don't need to know when we're about to go to the register page because it's animating out as we're doing that. So there's no need for a run command in this case. So just remove that. This was all temporary code. So right now this is at the point where to do go to register page. And of course we haven't done anything, so let's just await. Trying to think of the best way of doing this. Just await a delay for one just to get rid of the error. This is also needs to be ending in the name async. So the other thing you'll notice, I've added a config file to really force again, more for I work in an environment with multiple developers and everybody's got a different style. I like to keep the style specific. So I've created, if we go to my overall Git repository, you can see I've created this editor config. If you open this in code, this is a new thing for Visual Studio. Editor config isn't new, it's a thing, but it's now supported in Visual Studio 2017. And as you can see, I've styled everything with these specific names, like avoid this for methods, fields, events, and properties, so that's why this is complaining. That name can be simplified. You don't need this because login is running. If we look where this is, it's in our public properties here. So there's no need to put this dot in front of it. This is what I used to like doing, but now I've since changed my mind. It's a redundant piece of, writing that you don't need, text you don't need. So the reason that's red is because I've got this editor config file in the master directory where this is a child of, and I've set this up. So for fields, methods, in this case it was this properties one, I want to say don't have this, and I want it to show as an error in Visual Studio. And I basically errored everything out. I've like forced my styling convention throughout the entire application. And the same with like login, you'll see it says name rule violation, missing suffix async. So what happens when you get more people working on code and your code grows as well? You can have synchronous functions like this that just you call it, there's no, as you call that command it runs. And then you've got things that return tasks, and they can be awaited. So if you don't await them, like here you've awaited a delay, then after here, if you then do something else, int I, or var I rather, equals 1 say, if we waited 1,000 here, this will now run the register function, it'll wait for a second, and then it'll do whatever code you've got. If you remove the await, then it's now going to tell you, for one, that it's not awaited, so this is going to run completely separate, and this will hit straight away while that's still waiting. But the issue comes not necessarily when some people might turn these squiggly lines off, and other times it's just sometimes not obvious that you want to await something, that it needs awaiting. So what I've started doing is enforcing that anything that returns a task ends with the name async. So you'll see that as a naming rule down here that I made somewhere here, and it basically states that required suffix is async if the method has async in it. So you don't need to understand this is something separate, but I'm just letting you know why I've now got these warnings, if you will, these errors. So I'm going to go ahead and rename that login, Control RR, and end it with async. So now it's really obvious this method is asynchronous, like there. So now if we were to say remove this async, and we remove that, it's going to highlight in green there, but that might not always happen. People might turn that off. But it's really obvious you've got the word async there, so you know there should be await before it. So that's the reason why I've put async after there, and then we'll clear up this. So a little bit sidetracked there, but again, I always try to keep things clean, and I'm always improving on it and changing things. So that was that. So back to where we were. So now we're at the register page. Put that back in a second. So the first question is, how do we change pages? Well, in this case, we have the main window. I think, yep, main window. If we go down, has a frame, as we know here, and this frame is bound to the current page of the view model, which is the app view model right now. No, the Windows view model rather. And then we use a converter, application page value converter. So application page value converter, which converts the page to this page. So to change the page, we need to change the application, so the window view model. We need to change this current page here, as we do to change the page. So you can do that one way. So the quick way, just to test that what we're doing works, this register page, and this is where we're going to move into dependency injection in a moment, and you'll see why. And we're also going to split this project into a core and a WPF, so there's going to be a lot of cleanup. But you'll see why we're doing that in a moment. So you're at the register, you're in the login view model, you now want to change to the register page. So you're in one part of code in this view model. So how do we now get back to the main window, to the frame, to the current page? So effectively the data context of the window, which we set up simply here as a view model. So we need to get the main window, then we need to get its data context, we need to cast it to a Windows view model, then we need to change the current page. And as you can guess, that's clearly not what we're going to end up doing, But in order to do that, we have application.current.main window, which is named the same as ours, but isn't the same thing. It just means gets the main window of the application. So this will get us a window. We need to cast it to our known type, which is main window, because we know that's what our window is. A little bit confusing that it's called the same thing, main window, but that's just a property. This is our class name. This could have been called any other name. So don't get that confused. This will always return the main window of the application, regardless if it wasn't called main window. It just happens that we've called ours main window. So this statement will get this window. Now in this window we need to get its data context in order to get the view model that it's bound to. So we then do .data context, which is again just an object. It doesn't know what it is. We need to cast that, so we'll cast that over here again. That we know is a window view model. And then we need to wrap that up again. And now we can finally get to the current page. And we can change that to... and then we need to also add the register page here. So let's just add another page. The register page. And then because we've done that, we need the application page value converter to also create us a new page of register when we do that. So that will now create the register page. This will change the page now to the register page. And that will actually then change pages, or should do. So let's press F5 and let's at least prove that we've changed a page. And then you know how you technically do it. So we click that, and it's changed to, as you can see, the sign up page. And then we obviously can't. You've now also see this navigation bar that by default has appeared because we're inside a frame. So you can actually use this now to go back and forward between your pages. You could also style this, and you see my dark theme's a little bit messed up there. You could style this custom so that it looks nice and you keep it, and then you've got a little navigation bar at the top, but we'll decide on that later. But you can see that's now navigated the page. When we click that, it goes ahead. Oh, in fact it did. It's now no longer... There's another thing with that navigate page. This isn't bound to our view model, so it still thinks we're in the register page even when we're not. So we'd have to bind the navigation service to that. But in general, that's where we are. We now run the application. This code runs, and we can change from the sign in to the sign up. And again, we'll fix this animation afterwards. So that's how you navigate. But now, another issue here is this code is growing. All this needs to be shared. This could be, this application will grow. It's going to get huge. You don't just want it all in one project. We need to split this out to multiple projects. And view models are going to be in the base project, so that they can be reused throughout different versions, say the Android application or the iOS application. So this view model we're in right now, when we move it out to the core, this won't even have access to this, because this is WPF. So we wouldn't be able to even do this in order to get the data context, in order to change the page. And this is also a really bad way of doing it. This is leaving the control of how you get the data in the hands of the caller here. So this is one issue. For one, it's always, and this is a question that a lot of you brought up many times, was, well, how do I do this? How do I access that? How do I change the side menu? And you're going to have the same issue all throughout. You're like, well, there's the side menu. So this is right now just a side menu control on a main window in the application with no name. So right now you can't access that. You need to give it a name, then you can access it, but then you're back to accessing it this really bad way. Or you're talking about then calling a function like this register that needs to be passed in the window view model as a variable, sort of like, window view model like this. So it's going to start getting messy. So the solution to this, hopefully now you've seen the problem. The problem is, accessing different parts of your application from other parts. So let's leave everything as it is, and let's start by creating a new project first. So this is the Windows, the Faceta.word project, the main one, the WPF application. Right click on your solution, add, and we want a new project, and we want a class library, so .NET Framework in this case. We're already in the Faceta.word source folder, so let's just open that up. And you can see right now the solution is here, and then you've got the Faceta.word, which is the project inside. So if we now add this new class library, we call it Faceta.word.core. Click OK. It's created us a new class library, which compiles to a DLL file. And now you can see it's added this new folder. Inside there we've got the new project. And then when we compile it, which we haven't yet, if we just press Control Shift and B, it will build. You can now see we've got this DLL file. So this is what a class library is. This is a DLL, just a code that now we can reference in other applications. So now we've got the word core, which I don't like that being that way around. Let's move that up. Oh, okay. I guess that's staying there for the moment. Is there a sort order? I'll fix that anyway. I'll look at where you organise that. So here's the core project. Now inside of the WPF, we should be able to access this public class 1, which is in core. But first we have to reference this project. So just because it's in the solution, it doesn't mean that this other project can access this project. They need to know about each other. Or in this case, the Word application needs to know about the core. So in the Word application, you've got references here. Expand it, you can see what we're referencing. That's how we're finding things. Right click on there and add reference. Or you can right click on the project itself and then do add. At least I thought you could there. Oh yeah, add reference. So you can do it one or two ways. You go to projects and you can see it's found our Faceta word core. Check this box and click OK. And now we've got this Faceta word core reference here. So now in our code, let's just go to say the application. Typical. Let's just go to BasePage, somewhere we've got some function we can just jump inside of. And then here you can see we should be able to now do Faceta.word.core, which it sees, and there's your class 1. So now all you need to do to access class 1 or whatever's in that library is to make sure you either specify the namespace or you just add the using namespace to the top of your class, like that. So that's all we're doing, is we're separating the code out into two projects. And the difference here is as well, this project, the Word, you can see references, the Windows shell, the WPF stuff, the presentation. We've got the system files, we've got Windows base. All these references mean that this is now a WPF application. So we couldn't then reference code inside of here in our iOS application when we come to make it, because iOS has no idea what WPF is or what some of these things are. Whereas if you look at our core library project now, the references in here are C# itself and the core.NET framework stuff, which is all accessible in iOS and Android and other things. So this can be shared. The benefit of now having a class library not linked to WPF is that we can now share this code between multiple different versions of our software. So let's delete this class and let's start dragging and dropping code over. So animation, that's WPF stuff. Attach properties, WPF. Controls, WPF. Data model. Now a data model is simply specifying what page we're on. So that's useful throughout the entire application, not just WPF. So we drag data model into Faceta.word. It makes a copy. We can then delete this original. Expressions. Again, this is expression helpers. I thought I need to uninstall to stop that expanding. This expression helpers is, again, universal, if you will. So we want to close that down. Let's close all of them down a second. We want to drag this expressions into the core project and delete it from here. The fonts are used in the WPF application, they stay. So are images, so are pages. Security is universal again, it's just helping with secure strings, so drag that into the core. Delete it from WPF. Styles are WPF specific. Value converters are WPF specific. View models are definitely not, so drag all the view models into core. Delete them from there. The window is a WPF specific one. In fact, there's one thing that we need to keep in, as I mentioned a good few videos back. we made one view model that was technically WPF specific. It says window view model because we include in the constructor a WPF window. So this has to stay in the WPF project, and that's good because this is only doing things for a WPF window anyway. So this is, this is fine staying there. The one thing we need to move out is the this current page. So we'll move that out afterwards, but let's finish what we're doing. So the window is WPF, and then all this is WPF. So now all we've done is moved some of the code that should be shared between other projects into a core project. So let's just do Control, Shift, and B to build, and let's see what we've broke. So two things have failed, which will be both projects. But let's have a look at the errors. So partial declaration of chat page must not be specified. That's just an error. I'll tell you what, let's unload the Word project first, so we don't get mixed up between two different project errors. So here we go. So namespace corner radius can't be found. Window view model we need to delete. We copied that back already. Build again. There we go, much less. So implement property changed isn't there. Well, if you remember, this come from Foddy Weaver that we installed in Word. So let's go ahead and add that to this project. So in the core project, right-click references, manage NuGet packages, and we did this again in the Word application when we added Foddy Weaver. So do Foddy property property change.FoddyWeaver. Let's install that, and that will add the Foddy Weaver into this project as well. We know we'll need the other thing, which is Newtonsoft. JSON for serialization and things. So let's just go ahead and install that now. I know for a fact we'll need that. And now we can see we've got implement property change back. Let's Control Shift and B to build again. Fix a minor error where there isn't really the error. This is my, again, editor code. You won't see this error, but I will because I've got this on. I'm just going to rename run command to run command async with Control RR. Build again. Now, and the name application doesn't exist, so this is the problem I was telling you about with now. Oh, let's move to the register page. Well, now because we're in a core library, because view models want to be shared throughout other applications, we now can't access this WPF window because this is now going to be run on multiple platforms. So this is no longer any good. So let's just comment that out. We'll fix that afterwards. And that's it. That's now building apparently. So let's run. We can't start the out. Oh yeah. Now we need to unload the Word project and see if that still builds. So right click on the Word, click reload project. Control Shift B. And now cannot find ChatLessDesign model instance really. ChatLessDesign model is because we move that into here, which is actually fine. I think what's happened is this is now a different, well, the other thing, let's fix this first as well. Now we've moved all these classes into core, we want to go through every file in here, and in fact we should be able to search by find and replace by project. So make sure we're in this core project, have a some code open that's from this project, and also just to be sure, right click on the core and set a startup project to make sure it's bold, and then just find somewhere with namespace Versetto.word. Press Control Shift and H to do find and replace all. It's already put in what we highlighted, and we're going to change every instance of the namespace Versetto.word to Versetto.word.core. And we want to look in, and hopefully this has got current project. Yeah, current project. So we're going to do basically a find and replace everything in this project.core. We're going to basically change all of the namespaces from Versetto.word to Versetto.word.core because that's where these all are contained within now. Click replace all. Yes, and we've replaced 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's 12 code files, that's right. So now we'll have broken a few more things, because now we've moved these view models off into a new namespace that in WPF now, where we've tried to reference them, as you'll see, we can't find like this login view model. So control dot and using facetto.word.core now to find them. So you'll have a few of those. To be honest, for how small this project is, it'd be easier to just click through the files. And let's just take a look at every file. That seems fine. This wants to be renamed to async, so I'm just going to rename this. So slide and fade out to left, and it's returning a task, so I'm renaming it to async. Same there. Again, these errors you won't get, as I keep mentioning. This is just my styling convention that I'm going to start sticking to for future videos. So every task will return a function ending with the word async, so it's really obvious. Storyboard. That seems all fine. So that's got no issues. Attach properties. Start at the top, work down. This is, again, I'm forcing. In fact, let me change this. I don't want to force this. So let me just prefer method like constructors, prefer property. So I don't want to do this for any of those at the moment. I don't want to force that style. You don't have to understand this bit. This is, again, basically because I expect functions to have curly braces. In C#7 you can do this instead, like a shorthand way of making a function. But I was originally forcing them to be, you know, using curly brackets. But there's certain cases like this where, you know, I think it's fine. So close and reopen, and that should stop complaining at me for doing that. Nope, still gonna complain. Use block for body methods. I've completely told it to ignore that. Okay, well that I'm going to ignore that because that's not an actual Visual Studio error. That should go away. I think it's just taking its time to. Probably need to compile maybe to get it, because it can't compile the project at the moment. It's doesn't seem to want to let go of that. So they aren't real errors, so that's fine. Attach property is fine. That's all fine. This is where it'll get fun. ChatLessControl. So now we need to make sure, and this is why we're doing this now, to make sure we're ahead of the game. This ChatLess design model is now in core, down here, ChatLess design model. So we're saying it's in local. Copy and paste this local. Change this to core. Change the namespace to the core namespace. And let's change where we're finding this from. And that's core. And that'll fix that error when it's compiled. F7 to check the code behind. That's all fine. And that's the majority of what we'll be fixing, is just changing the namespaces in XAML. ChatLessControl, I'm guessing the same thing. The view models, converters rather, are still where they are. That seems all fine. There's one. Again, the design model is now in core, so change that to core. Go up and add a core namespace. Save that. Code behind, I don't think it's got anything. Nope. Side menu control. This definitely will have some things in, I think. Let's make a core namespace to start with. And then let's look through for, in fact you can even search for local colon. Oh, so there's nothing in there using that, so that one's fine. Code behind is fine. So that's all the controls done. And this is why, one of the reasons why I wanted to separate off into you know, multiple projects now, because otherwise the further you go, the more refactoring you have to do. BasePage, base view model, control dot, and then enter to find the new namespace. Scroll through. Use expression body for access, as that's what I do want to do. This, again, you won't get this error. This is another style that I want to do. Control dot and you'll see the fix, and that's that we can do this getter much easier, like that. You can instead of having to use curly brackets, you can do a nice shorthand version like that. Remove this, get rid of this again. So this is all me just cleaning up my style that I've now changed a little bit of. Base page loaded, and because this is asynchronous, because we're awaiting in there, it's complaining that we don't really want to end that in async. So let's remove the async there, and we just animate, and we don't need to do anything. We don't need to wait that. We just ignore it. So in fact, let's just do a task.run, and let's run the task independently of the function. So that's doing exactly the same thing, but because of my naming convention of if it's asynchronous here, then you want to name this asynchronous. It's not really asynchronous. This is when the base page loads, it's synchronous. I was just using a little thing that you shouldn't really do very often, and it is to put async with void, because that means that nothing can actually await this function. So even though you can await inside of it, the caller could never wait for that to finish. So it's sort of bad practice in a way. So this is a better way of doing it anyway, and my naming conventions have sort of forced me to do that now. Animate in, again you can see animate in is asynchronous, so let's just rename that to animate in async. And again, that's made this obvious, that if we had missed a wait, it's got the word async after it, so it's really obvious. Remove this, and this is good because now I'm cleaning up all of my code style changes at the same time as doing this move, by just going through all of these files, and because there's not that many, it's fine. Animate out, name to animate out async. That's that file done. Chat page has got nothing on at the moment, so we're fine there. F7. It's got a view model, but that's fine as well. Different base class login view. Sorry, it has got it. We've got a local login view model here. That's core login view model. Nearly missed that one. So do the core there. That should now not complain. It probably just needs compiling now for that. Just double check that. Yeah, that's fine. Save that. Login page. Again, we've got local up there. It needs to change to core for the view model. Copy and paste the namespace to core. .core. And then let's just have a quick search for local in the rest of the file. Have I spelt it right? So we've got local there is busy property. That's a value attached property, so that's fine where it is. And that's it. So that file's done. F7 to make sure the code behind's okay, which it isn't. Control dot, find the new namespace, and now it's fine. Register page will be exactly the same because we copy and pasted, so change that to core, copy and paste that to core. And what I think I'll do, so you guys don't have to do all this cleanup, I'll do all this cleanup and all this moving, and then I will push all of that code into GitHub so that you could start the video from, say, the cleanup stage, where all I've done is move things around and clean things up, to save you having to do this work, which is kind of sort of mundane, if you will. So I'll do that in a moment when we finish the cleanup. That's the register page done. Styles, I'm pretty sure they've got no issues. We don't rely on anything in styles that aren't in the styles. In fact, I'm not even going to bother checking. I'm sure they're okay. Have a quick glance at Windows, which has got nothing in. That can actually go. Let's make sure the app doesn't reference that, which it does. Get rid of that. There's nothing in it. That's styles done. Value converters. Seems okay. Oh, hang on. Go back a minute. Application page is now in core. Add the view model. Add the namespace rather. That's now fine. BaseValueConverter. This is going to complain because it's a static, and again I've now changed my naming convention. If it's a static member, we expect it to just be uppercase to start with. So let's just change that to converter. And the rest of that's fine. Boolean to visibility converter. It's fine. String RGB to brush. I think it's fine. Yep. So that's the value converters done. This one view model. Need the namespace there. Control dot enter new namespace. These are currently complaining because again we can shorthand these brackets into this new style, which is just the equals greater than and then the function without the return. So to do it manually on say this one, instead of get being these curly brackets, you just simply remove equals greater than, remove the return word, and then remove the close bracket. And now because we've done the getter, and this is also only a getter, you can actually go and remove that as well and change this to that. And that's a complete shorthand version. So again here the getter, you just return everything because it's only got a getter, not a setter. Equals greater than, and then remove the two curly brackets. And that's cleaned that up. This again, because we've got a getter and a setter with curly brackets, there's no need. This is going to clean that up for us. Control dot enter. And move the comment above. Move that to there. And again, you won't get these errors. If you're wondering why yours doesn't show this, it's just because of my styling editor config file. But again, look how much nicer that looks now. So look how easy that is to read compared to, well, not necessarily easy to read, but shorter. So that was what it was, and now it's that. So again, this is why I've made this editor style, to try and force me to write, again, cleaner, shorter code. And all you have to remember when you see something like this is, if it's not got parentheses at the end like this, which will actually work, it'll turn it into an actual function, a method. If it's not got that, and it's got your equals greater than, then it's going to be a property. If you put if you put the parentheses there, then it's going to be a method. So that's how you tell the difference now between, you know, a property that's obvious like this because it's got a getter and a setter, to a property that's not exactly directly obvious. You have to just look a little bit to make sure there's no parentheses there. So that this is the same again as you've just seen when you undo the changes. It's just a getter, so a property with a getter. It's just a quicker way of doing it again. Same for this one. I'll speed through these now, you know what I'm doing. Just cleaning up the getters and setters. Commands are all fine, constructors fine, private helpers fine. So that's the window view model done. Nearly there. We've got the window resizer, which I'm sure is going to be fine. I'm going to bother checking all of that. This can be inlined. I'll just fix that one little thing. Again, that's something you won't see. That's in C#7 again. When you got something that wants an out, so this function wants to set this value for us. You pass it as an out. So what you usually do, you create the variable, then you pass it as an out. Well, now in C#7, you can actually put out and then the type and then the name of the variable all in one line, like that. So now, even though you haven't created a variable above it, just by passing it in like this, it's actually created the variable here. So this is like defining the variable, and then it's passed it as an out at the same time. So below it, we've now actually got al mouse position as a variable. Again, just a quicker way of, well, a shorter way of doing the same thing, passing out variables directly by creating them at the same time. I'll leave that file now, that'll be all done, I'm sure of it. App.config we don't need to look at, Weaver we don't need to look at, packages we don't need to look at, so we've got the app and the main window left. The app is fine. F7 for the code behind, there's nothing in, that's fine. Main window, last but not least. Scroll to the top. I'm sure there's going to be some core stuff in here, so copy and paste the namespace core and then add .core at the end. And let's do a search for local colon. So we've got the main window, which is in the Word application, which is local, that's fine. We've got application page value converter, that's also in there, that's fine. And we've got the user control, that's fine. So actually there's nothing in there that's not in the WPF project, so that's all okay. So with that cleanup, fingers crossed, Control Shift and B should now build this. I've got a feeling there'll still be an error somewhere. Chatless design mode, that's going to complain. So, you know, sometimes this happens as well. So even though core is there and it's valid, when you do things with WPF and you move stuff around, sometimes you need to just unload the WPF project, make sure everything else builds, which it has, and then reload this project and build again. And sometimes it just gets stuck in thinking things don't exist, like it seems to be here. So unless we're really missing something obvious here. So, oh, I know what it is. The core namespace we've specified wrong each time. We manually typed it in. You just click here in the namespace, press Control and space, and then you'll see it's found it. Now press enter, and you can see it's tallying. It's going to add this assembly because it's in a different assembly, and then it started building. So let's just undo that. Now let's just do a find replace all. So let's select this namespace, Control Shift H, find all instances of that what we just selected, paste it in there, and we need to change it to whatever it was. So let's just go forward to there, copy that and add it to there. So we're basically going to find all instances of the word core XML and change it to the new style with the assembly at the end. And that's current project. Now let's just do entire solution, replace all, yes, 6 found. So that's fixed the namespace. So now it should finally build. There we go. Right, let's press F5 and see if anything else works. Right click on Word and make it the startup project again. F5. And there we go, we have the application. We've got no page here, so let's make sure the app view model, which is, I keep calling it app view model. I want to make one called app view model. We've got the window view model. I'm hoping the current page is set to, oh dear. So the current page is now not working because we've got the login page and it's not loading the login page. So we've caused some kind of break. So let's take a look at the application page value converter, put a break in here, run the code, and let's see what's going wrong. So we're finding that, we're saying page, we're returning page, and apparently that's loading it. So something there is now not loading the page. So let's go to main window, the frame. So that's finding it, you're setting it to a page. Background transparent. So this should show in here if we split this down a bit. Let's hide that off again. And let's just change this content for the moment to, that's a bad idea, let's just override it. Well actually that's fine, that is the main frame. pages. Login pages there. Base page. I know what the issue is. So see this thing I said was better to do this way? That's wrong. What we've done is we've loaded the page, and because you need to load the page, so this animate in starts messing with UI stuff. So it slides in from the right, which goes in, and it takes a page, which is a UI item, and it starts messing with the page, the visibility. This is actually going to throw an error. This is going to crash here, because what we're trying to do, it's a subtle thing, but I've seen it enough that I can spot it now. If we go back to the base page, back to the page loaded, it comes in, it loads, and then we animate in. Right now, this call from loaded has come from the UI itself. So we're on the UI thread. There's multiple threads in an application, and the UI thread, there's only ever one. It's a single thread. There's only one thread in the entire system that updates the screen, and that's called the UI thread. We're on it when we get into here. When you're doing task.run, what you're actually doing is then coming off the UI thread, and then you're running this function now in just a standard thread that isn't on the UI. And there's a rule when you come to edit UI stuff. So when you're editing any UI element like a button or a page or anything to do with UI, you have to be on the UI thread. So there's two solutions to this. The first is we just change this back to async, which we're going to do, and we'll fix the name. We'll just call it async for now. The second, if you were somewhere else in code and you ran this animate, and then you boiled down to wanting to slide in, and you're all the way into this code right here when we're doing UI stuff, you could then make a helper function that at this stage says, right, make sure I'm on the UI thread, and if not, put me on the UI thread, then do this code and then come back. That's more complicated, and I'll cover that in a separate video. Let's also prove that I'm right here, because I'm just telling you I am. Turn on all exceptions, so Control Alt and the letter E, and click here. That should always be on. This is why you'd get this issue and go, what's going on? If nothing happens, nothing crashes, and something doesn't work, press Control Alt and E, and make sure you've got this checkbox here on Common Language Runtime. I expect this will crash, but I'm going to put a breakpoint after it, and we should see that we'll hit here anyway. Now let's press F5 and run the application again, and let's see if I was right. So we come to the application to get the page, we know that works. Oh, we're actually failing shorter than that, but same issue. We're trying to access the page here, and the page is UI, and we're not on the UI thread as we mentioned, so the calling thread cannot access this object because a different thread owns it. And that's because when you step back, which you can't go any further back than this on here, we might be able to see it in debug Windows threads, tasks, threads, there's threads. Here we are above. So you can see the main thread here is it's called main thread, this is the UI thread, and it's a managed ID of 1. So at this point we were on the UI thread here. Then when you've done task.run and you've come into the animate function, or we just jump into this thread, you can see now this is just a worker thread. This is, and there's the garbage collector from Windows cleaning up. But the point is, this is on a different thread. You can see here thread ID 3. So the reason it fails is because we need to be on this thread, the main thread, to update the UI. So I went a little bit deep there to explain that, and that'll have gone over your head in some way, but at least it gives you a general idea of what the issue was and why. And it's because we need to make sure if we're changing UI that we're on the UI thread. And again, using view models will actually prevent a lot of that from happening in the first place, as you'll see. So let's just go and fix this now. So for now, change this back to async, and then we can await this. And the reason this works is due to a little bit of trickery in doing an async with a void. It doesn't really spin off a new thread, so it stays on the thread you're on when you're not. The caller thread called in, and that's awaiting this, as opposed to task starting up. So because the caller that won't await us anyway calls in, we don't break off to a new thread. Let's just rename this to async as well, just so we know it's asynchronous. And let's run that again. And then we should be back to effectively a working app. So there we go. Everything's back to where we were. We're now also cleaned up. So all we've really done there is created a new project, a class library. We've moved all the stuff over into this library that is going to be shared. So basically anything in here that can be moved, we will move. Because these are all specific to WPF, like the page animation is only for animating a page in WPF. Potentially we could move that to core if we wanted to use that anywhere else, but right now that's only used in page animations. And a page is WPF, so everything in here, every class in the WPF application now, in the project, is all specific to WPF. Anything else we do is now in this core, so that when we come to make other projects, we can use this shared library. The one thing I said we did need to do, we need to move this current page to the core library, because the current page is obviously throughout the entire application, not just in WPF. So in the view model, let's make something that I keep calling and haven't made yet, the application view model. And this is sort of going to be the view model for the state of the whole application. So make that public, be a base view model, the application state as a view model, something like that. Let's take this out of the window view model, which is now completely and utterly related to just the window, so it just styles the window, sizes the window and what have you. Let's paste this into the application view model, and now we've got the current page there. Control Shift and B and just find out what's broken where, how it's building. That shouldn't build. Oh, we know why it's building, because the main window is XAML and it doesn't realise it's failed. So jump into the main window. Right now we're binding to the current page, but if you press F7, the window is bound to window view model. Let's get rid of this there. So this is no good, because the data context in here is the window view model. We want an application view model now in order to get to the current page. So although this now won't work, I'm going to commit this as the cleaned up code, because the next step is to, again, these are another reason why you need it. The application view model, you want one throughout the application. So this wants to bind to this, the single instance of that view model. But how does it get the view model from here? So what we're going to use is NInject, which is like a dependency injection. And it's going to solve all these problems for us. It's going to have a universal way to access a view model, and then be able to bind to that view model. So in fact, let's fix this at least so it's a working project when we commit. What we'll do is in the main window, we'll just make a public application view model. Call it application view model. And then you use the shorthand, and it's a new application view model. So we just make a single instance of it there. This is a temporary thing, so I'm not going to bother commenting it. But now we can at least bind to this. So in the binding, you want it to now be the path, the element name rather, wants to be this window. So let's check if we've got a name on the window yet. Yeah, name app window. So we want to bind to the app window, which if you go to the code behind is this window. So we'll be able to then bind to application view model dot current window. Sorry, dot current page. So element name app window, and the binding path is application view model dot current page. And I think that should get us back to working. So let's just see if that works. There we go. So that's now working again. Just get rid of this threads window. Oh, close it. So I'm going to commit this code. This was sort of the cleanup phase, if you will. We've moved everything off into the shared library. We've separated the current page to the app view model, and now we want to finally get back to doing this login page well, now the login view model rather, that we had to comment out to get working, we want to now get hold of, and you'll see this current page is now in an app view model, and again you'll see the temporary fix we've just done has put the app view model back into the WPF application, which this file is in the core application, has no access to that, so we can no longer do this at this stage anyway. We can't get access to the view model to change the page. So let me just quickly commit this to GitHub, and then we'll come back. So that's all pushed to GitHub now as clean up and move to core class library as the comment. So now we can move on to fixing this register async. So in order to now access, you want to be able to access sort of everything from everywhere in your application. That's usually what happens. You're somewhere in code and you're like, right, how can I now access this? And the issue is having that control of where all that information is stored and how it works. So it's easier to show than explain. So let's just go ahead and install what's called NInject. And we'll add that to both projects. So right click references, manage NuGet packages, and then in browse type NInject, and the top one, install that, accept the license. That's done. Right click on Word as well, manage NuGet packages, NInject, install that. We've also got an update apparently. Just check out what wants updating. Foddy can be updated. That's fine, let's update that. I want to override the file. So we've now got what's updating here as well. 1 second, I'm just keeping everything up to date. So same here, Foddy, update, don't override. Foddy failed to uninstall, please restart. Okay, let's just quickly restart Visual Studio. And that's now uninstalling that double click that doesn't work. And that's it. So don't bother installing this double click maximize extension, it's useless. Restart Visual Studio. Open up the project. And now we've got NInject installed. All that's done is in your references, we've now got this NInject, that's all it's done, added the reference. So we want to now make use of that. And let's just start by basically doing that. So in core, right click and add a new folder. And call this IOC, and that stands for inversion of control. And that's because we're now passing off control of finding services in our application off to NInject. Create a new class in there. We'll just call this IOC container. It's a public class. It'll be a public static class because we want one instance through the whole application. The IOC container for our application. And in there we want a public static, it's a kernel, so it's ikernel, and then control dot to find the namespace using NInject. Call this kernel, expose that as a getter with a private setter, and it's a new standard kernel. Comment there, the kernel for our IOC container. And the kernel is basically where you get and bind all of your information in the whole of NInject. So again, you'll see this happening. We want to have a public static void configure. Let's say this is the thing that needs to be run. Or in fact, let's call it setup, because that's what we're doing. We're setting it up. Sets up the IOC container, binds all information required, and is ready for use. must be called as soon as your application starts up to ensure all services can be found. So we're going to have our app calling this setup, so we've got the container ready. So in the setup, we don't need to do this because we've already done it, it's static, so that will happen, that's just going to get created anyway. But as well as creating a new kernel, well, that's really it, all we need to do to set up the whole kernel. We also now want to do some binding, so we want to bind all these view models that we want, say, a single instance of. And right now the only thing we want one of is the application view model. We can have a single one in the login view model, but again, we don't need it right now. But we do need to access this application view model to change the current page of the application. So we have to change this throughout the application. So we want one instance of this because we only want a single application view model. So let's bind all required view models. Call it bind view models. Control dot and enter to make the function. Binds all singleton view models. So we call setup, it calls this, and then here we want to use the kernel, and we'll call .bind. The type is application view model, and you can do one or two things. You can do bind dot to self dot in singleton scope, which basically is saying create a single instance of this class. Whenever you call, whenever you try to get this, it's always a single instance. But what I prefer to do, just in case you want to change something about that, you want to, instantate it, create something or set something up, the same as doing to self.inSingleton scope is to do dot to constant, and then in here just make a new application view model. And then if you ever want to set up or change that view model, set up some data as default, like the current page, you can now set it up here and change the current page to, say, register, on startup. So it gives you a bit more control doing it this way. So that's going to create a new application view model. Bind to a single instance of application view model. So by doing this kernel.bind, now anywhere in the application that can access this kernel can do kernel.get and try and get this back. So that's what we're going to do there. Let me think. We also want to window view model. No, we could do main window. Yeah, that'll do for now. So in the app now, because on startup we need to initialize this container, the first thing that WPF does when it starts up is it goes into the app, and then inside the app it does a startup function, and in the startup by default it's gonna then read this startup URI and then spin up the window. Well, if our window, main window here, expects, and it will do, to say get a window view model or to get something like this, for example, you want to change this to now get the view model from the kernel, we need to make sure that we've initialized this container. We've called this setup function immediately, so before anything runs. So we first want to change the behavior of the application starting up. We want to control that ourselves. So let's delete this main window, start up main window. Let's go to the code behind. Now if we ran, which I think it should build, I don't think we've broken anything yet. Yeah, so if we run now, you'll see the bar will go orange at the bottom, but we get nothing. We're running an application, but we've never started up anything. We've never opened a window, so there's nothing there because we removed the startup URI. So now if we override the on startup, we do all what the base needs to do. Custom startup, so we load our IOC immediately before anything else. Let the base application do what it needs, and then after that we want to configure our IOC. So we'll call IOC container, which is a static class in our core, which we can't, there we go, using IOC container is not capitalized C for some reason, typo, IOC container, dot setup, so setup dependency injection right away. And again, as you start typing this throughout your application, you don't want to type IOC container for everything. So let's just make a quick shorthand for that. So public static class IOC. And we'll start mimicking some functions. So shorthand name for the IOC and class. Now, let's forget making a shorthand class. Let's just rename the class to IOC. And then light bulb, rename the file. So we're now just calling it IOC. It's a bit shorter. So IOC.setup. So now we set up the IOC, which will just go into this function, call this function, and simply bind an application view model. So we get a new application view model that we can access everywhere. After we've done that, we just need to now show the original window. So show the main window, which is what we were doing before when we had the startup URI. So that's current.main_window equals new main window, current.main_window.show. And that's all the startup URI does anyway. So now if we run this code, we should see we hit here, the application runs, we call that, we set up the IOC, we create a new window, and then it's shown. So we're back to where we started, but now we've taken control of the startup away from the startup URI, and we've done it ourselves so that we can we can set up our IOC straight away. What that now means is anywhere in our application that's referencing core, which should be everywhere because that's the point of a core library, as it's the fundamental, part of your code that everything has to reference. We could now go to main window, and instead of this being application view model, you don't even need that because we've got it in the view model. We've got it in the IOC container. So now let's go to our, let's close some of these windows down. Let's go to our login view model. And, hang on a minute, let's change this binding again. So the binding, which was now binding to the element of this window to get the view model, now we want to bind to a specific view model of a specific name, or of a type rather. So we want to find a we need to do a converter to take in, say, the name, and then pull out a specific type from the IOC container. So I'll do this a simple way, and then we'll improve on this in another video, because I don't want this to take too long. So for now, let's just name it application view model, and we'll just literally check for that string for now. The converter, we want to call it IOC IOC converter. Simple as that. So it's just going to have a value converter, copy and paste this one, call this IOC converter. Should be able to rename the file to IOC converter, which is done. There we go. It's a base value converter of IOC converter. Convert a string name to a service pulled from the IOC container, and convert, switch the value of a string case, change it to, well, yeah, we'll just do this for now, and we're going to call it application view model, or in this case actually application view model name of. So at least if we rename it, that'll rename. And that is not a very nice way of doing it yet, because that relies on us then having to add this everywhere as opposed to just finding by name. So we'll improve on this, but for now, we'll basically take in this string name and parse it, application view model, and we'll find it here because this basically takes this hard-coded class and name of turns it into a string. So we just, instead of name of, you could do this. But the issue there is if we then go and rename our application view model, this won't get renamed. If we do name of and we rename this, obviously you can see in there it gets the new value. So this just checks for the application view model. If it finds it, we'll return, and this is where the cool thing comes in, IOC dot, and then we haven't got a helper function yet. It's basically kernel.get. And it's get service, is it? I thought it was just get application view model. I think we just need a, yeah, using NInject. So that's all you now need to do to get the application view model that we bound in here. So this exact instance here, from anywhere in the application, you can now do IOC.get. So let's turn this into a helper function, just IOC.get, control dot, F12 to go to the function it made for us. Let's clean up this class a little bit. Public properties. Clean up the unused namespaces. This will be type T, gets a service from the IOC of the specified type to get, and we just simply return the kernel.get the T, and that's it. So it's just a shorthand way of calling that. This is, let's call this, I know it's not strictly a constructor, but we'll call it construction, so it's pretty obvious that it's a sort of setup. In fact, the binding is also part of the construction, that's like the setup code. And then move this below. So we've now got a get function. We can now call get here. So what should happen is this should build. I think this is just complaining because we haven't. Yeah, there we go. So this should now use the local IOC converter we just made. It'll pass in the string application view model, and we should then pull it out of the injection to now find the application view model. So if we press F5 with a breakpoint there, should start up. Yay, nothing happens. So, oh, hang on, we've bound, oh, there's a point. This binding, this is the path, it's not the path that we want. We just literally want a converter from a value, converter parameter. I don't know whether you can just pass, no, you can't do that. Let's see if we can do a blank binding. Again, we'll probably improve this. I'll think this through a bit more afterwards and maybe come up with a nicer way of doing this. Let's just try a converter with a converter parameter of application view model. So it should really, this binding will be bound to whatever this window is bound to, which is the window view model for now. So technically this will work, but we'll improve this so we can do something a bit smarter here. But this will now bind the converter with a converter parameter, which I think is what we were looking at anyway. No, we're looking at parameter. So now we'll look at the parameter. So let's see if this works. So there we go. We get the parameter, which is a string value of application view model. It matches the name application view model, so we return the application view model from the IOC. And yeah, it's actually returned the application view model. And that was because we have bound it to that and we need to convert it further. So we've now got the view model, but that's not really what we wanted. We wanted the convert the view model. In fact, in the view models here, let's add a class, and this is called a view model the way we do this is called a view model locator usually. And again, it's kind of not ideal, but for now, again, this will get us going. This wants to be, how did we do the static value converters? I can't remember. Where's the instance thing we did? Base attach property. We did like a instance that was static with a class that wasn't. So we will want, fact, I think we can just do static view model locator with static application view model application view model, which is ioc.get application view model. No, okay. Application exception. That's not what I typed. Application view model. So let's just check this works, and I think we'll just use static view model locator dot application view model. So, well, it'd be application view model is what we want. The source will be static view model locator, I think. And then we can change the converter back to what it was, which was the page converter thing. Application view model dot current page. Converter is application page converter. So let's see if that works. Can't do the class, you got to do an instance of yourself. Okay, view model locator, public class with public static view model locator instance. See if that works. Okay, it doesn't exist in. I know what's happened. The locator's got the namespace on. Thank you, Visual Studio. Remove that. Build. Finally, there we go. Still complaining by. There we go. So, what we have to do is, in order to reference it as a source to bind to, similar to an attached property, we made the view model locator a class, and then we had to create a property, because you can only do a static to a property, not a class. So we just made basically a static instance of ourselves, so a singleton instance of this view model locator. So locates view models from the IOC for use in binding in XAML files. So we only need this due to being able to bind in XAML to be able to do this. Otherwise, you can just type, ioc.get and get what you need. So this is used in binding to find ones. So this is a region public property properties. Singleton instance of the locator. And then this is the actual application view model. So we can call into that. And then all we did was, similar to how we do attach properties, the source of the binding, we first tell it to use the instance of this view model locator. So it's going to use this class as the source of binding. And then we're going to get the application view model which is here, and then dot current page. So it's going to be the application view model. We go into it, and then the current page. So all that now is just them pulling out the current page from, effectively, boils all the way down to this instance we made right here. So everything that we access in the application view model from is from this single instance here. So that gets the current page now from there as the source that way. Then we use the original converter that we had as well. So that's now the new binding, which now uses the dependency injection to get the view model and bind to that page. Now why we did that is because now, if we now want to change the page of the whole application, it's bound to the current page. It's bound to this view model that's here in the core that's accessible everywhere. So now, in order to go back all the way back to where we started with our register page, which then boils down to our login view model here, and we get to here finally, right, go to the register page. How do we do it now? Well, it couldn't be simpler. ioc.get application view model dot current page equals register, and that's it. So anywhere in the application now we can call the IOC, we can get this instance that we've used everywhere in the application. We've bound it in the XAML here, we've now used it in the login view here, we've got that instance doing this, and we just change the current page. So if we press F5, we should now have a fully working binding to NInject that when we click here, it's now loaded the register page. So that might have seemed like a lot of work, and I know we've done a lot of cleanup as well everywhere else, and we've covered quite a lot there. I'm hoping you didn't just get lost in me sort of ranting on a little bit and cleaning things up, but you can see we've moved everything into a core library, which is now something that's got no reference to WPF. So we then cleaned up all the code there and made it work again. We then added NInject as NuGet packages to both libraries. We made this IOC class, which really does nothing more than create a new kernel here, which is basically somewhere where you store all the bindings. We set it up in the app XAML code behind to make sure it's set up, which then binds. Right now all we need is application view model to a single instance. Then we updated the main window to use that instance, and then finally we updated the login view model, which is in a different place in code, to now change effectively the current page of the application. So now we could change the current page anywhere at all in our entire application by just accessing the IOC, and that's called dependency injection. And at the start I left a window open with NInject in. So if you go to github.com NInject wiki, you'll get this nice page, which you can then do a bit further reading if you want to understand. But at least now you've got a working project and you can see it in use. And then you can go ahead and read through this. So why use NInject, and then getting started, and then dependency injection by hand if you weren't to use it, and then using NInject. And you just read through all this and you'll get some understanding of what's happening. But until you use it, I think this would be quite overwhelming. Just reading about something you haven't used is a bit daunting. So there's the use of it. We can now, in fact, register async is, this will become asynchronous because we're going to fix this to a way to page change and animate in properly. But for now, this is now the page done. So we've covered there really splitting your project into multiple projects basically, and then we've started our dependency injection, which is now going to rapidly expand in the application. So one of the other questions was, in the main window, how do we then change this side menu? Say I've clicked this button here, or I've done something else somewhere off in the code, and now I want to change the side menu. Bubbling back up and then being able to change that is now going to be really easy, because all we'll do is up here at this end we'll bind this content here to a view model of specific content types, and then anywhere in code you just use the IOC to get that view model and change you know, change it that way. So now you're going to start working with the IOC a lot. So this is a pretty advanced topic, as dependency injection. So hopefully this is really just the introduction to the dependency injection, the very early stages of doing dependency injection. But at least now we've got it in there, we can start using it. I can start explaining it more as we go. And you've seen the correct way of how to now change a page, you know, anywhere in the application. And we can start building on this now. We've now got an application where we've got a login page that we can click to go to a register page. And the same way around, we can add the register page to go back to the login page. We could add these buttons to do the same thing. We could change the title if we bind a title to that. We can do whatever we like now. So next video, we'll either do a bit more cleanup on the dependency injection, we'll either do the animation on the register page, the login page, or we'll do some chat bubbles. We'll see where we go. But hopefully this has been another useful video, and let me know what you think.